Hello, it's Friday afternoon and we thought it'd be a good idea to do a small short video on the Twin Kam 16 valve air series engine, which is essentially where specialist components started back in about 2003 to 2004 when I drag raced a Mini back in that day and we were looking to get more power out of the engine. So we've been doing this a long time, more than I think pretty much anybody else out there. We can't take the credit for inventing the conversion. A guy called Greg in Canada came up with this idea back in the 80s, and he did it on an 850cc engine, which is very hard to do. So yeah, credit for the conversion initially goes to Greg. We productionized it in the early 2000s, and we're still doing many things and bringing it forward today. So what is the Twin Kam conversion? Essentially what it is you use a BMW motorcycle cylinder head, either in 8 valve form or 16 valve form. You convert the cylinder head to fit the A series block, and at the same time you convert the A series block to fit the cylinder head. The matchup is very good, which is why it works initially. The bore spacing is probably 1.5 to 2 millimeters out in total across the 4 cylinders, but because they've got such compact combustion chambers, it doesn't really matter, and you get a nice amount of squish from the area which overlaps the pistons. So I'll go through a few things that sort of are interesting. We do this thing called a drilling template, which allows you to drop this on your block, mark it at position to the new stud holes once you've blocked everything else up, and then drill them through. The interesting thing is when you overlay this as a conventional mini head gasket, if you overlay that on the drilling template, I'll show you that on the camera. You can see the front 3 cylinder heads to the positions line up exactly with between the cylinder head and the block. So those are your reference points when you come to do the conversion. And you can see how close it all is. It's amazingly close. Even the oil way up this side of the cylinder head, the oil way in the BMW bike head on the K1100s comes through in this position within 5 millimeters of what the A series block is. There's a story behind that somewhere, but only someone old enough to work at BMW at the time could tell that one. So what does it do? What it does is you replace the Siamese port 5-port A series head with a double overhead cam system, which makes it a cross-flow design with both the 8 valve and the 16 valve, and it opens up a huge tuning potential, smooth running, lots of torque, etc. with the A series engine. So you combine a really efficient cylinder head with a pretty robust bottom end, and you can make it do whatever you want to do in terms of an engine. If you run through some of the specs, basic specs of the BMW cylinder heads, the K100 is the 8 valve cylinder head. They predominantly in Europe came with 288 degree camshafts, so they're slightly hot when you put them onto a mini bottom end. Nothing undrivable, not at all hard to drive. The cylinder heads in 8 valve form flow really well. You get something like 130 CFM on the inlet, 90 on the exhaust, which anyone that knows head flow figures on an A series, to get anything over 100 CFM inlet on an A series is doing extremely well. The beauty with the BMW cylinder head is it gains 134 CFM with quite a small port size, so your gas velocity through the cylinder head's very fast, which brings the torque up from idle to high RPM. Just a really efficient head. Typically on a 1293, an 8 valve head dropped straight on as it is with standard camshafts is going to give you 110, 112 horsepower. Smooth idle, 900 RPM idle. Rev to just over 7,000, about 110, 112 horsepower. Move on to the 16 valve. 16 valve gets a bit trickier because they did a lot more 16 valve variants. But if we stick to Europe and UK, you typically had K1100s, which had 254 degree cams. K1200 came out later on, that had 284 degree cams, a little bit more lift as well. All of the 16 valve parts between the K1100 and 1200 are all interchangeable. You can put the cams in either or, you can put the valves in either or. The only difference really is the stem guide on a K1200 is 5mm, on a 1100 6mm, but we can still put the guides in each other's heads and everything. You can mess around with them as much as you want. So if you look at the K1100, that's my favourite cylinder head. 254 degree cams mean you've got a rock solid 900 RPM idle. It'll rev around to 7,500. On a 1380 bottom end, you typically get 126 horsepower, but it drives like a modern 16 valve OEM Fiesta style car. So you can drive it to the shops. Typically customers report getting well over 40 to 50 miles per gallon on runs. They'll cruise at 70, 80 miles an hour, no problem. And you can still take them to track day, ring them out, have all the fun, embarrass loads of big cars, drive them home in complete silence. So the K1100 is a real dual purpose one. The K1200 has its benefits. The 284-degree cams aren't brilliant. In a Mini, they just don't seem to work, but we regrind them to our own specification. When you do that, the K1200 head comes alive and you can get lots of power. We'll talk about tuning that in a minute, but predominantly most people stick with the K1100 LT base head because it's just so dual purpose. It's the ultimate dual purpose A series. Moving on to what we do with our kits and things and options. To my left here, this is the basic, what I call basic mechanical conversion kit which we offer. And what it does is it converts from a pushrod style drive to a Twin Kam style drive. So you get conversion plates top and bottom. This replaces all of your timing gear system and things at the bottom. It's a very robust single piece design, which means you get rid of all your oil leak issues on the bottom of the engine. You still use your cam thrust washer in here for what is now becomes your idler drive to your oil pump. This little plate goes on top of it. The conversion plate fits on the front of the cylinder head, and then these are your pulleys. So you get a new crankshaft pulley, idler pulley, and vernier cam wheel pulleys combined with the adapters. These sit in the back of the in the front of the cylinder head. Sorry, they come through the conversion plate, and then your vernier pulleys sit on top of these drive pins. We make all of this stuff in house, so we control everything that goes into it. The whole assembly of the adapter, the camshaft, is held onto the camshaft, the original camshaft, with our AN24 one-piece high tensile studs. You get ram pipes to suit either the 1100 throttle bodies or the 1200 throttle bodies. So, like I say, this mechanical kit, if you combine this with one of our head gaskets, this will then get the engine in the car, effectively. You could have the engine built, once you've converted the block in the head, obviously. This is what you need to get it in the car. And then you can look at finishing off with your own components or using our ancillaries and things like that to get you the rest of the way. But predominantly, this combined with the head gasket, once it's converted, gets it in the car. Looking at ancillaries, we'll look at the head gasket a bit more. This is the head gasket that we use. It's made for us, bespoke in England. This is an aluminium carcass, which is then silicon coated, and then it has this one-piece fire ring system, which is quite wide, and we use this on everything from road engines to 250 horsepower supercharged engines, turbo engines, and everything else. Very reliable and very easy to install, and if you don't break it, it's reusable, which is really, really handy. Ancillary kit wise, we have these little parts which we make in house. Dipstick is quite handy because it comes out of the block in normal fashion and it comes up to the side underneath the throttle bodies, which come out the top. It's a nice curved design. This is our water outlet, which bolts on the front of the cylinder head and points the water way out towards the radiator, so you can do a nice neat routing to the top hose on a side mount mini radiator. We put the coolant temp sensor for our ECU in the front of it as well. And this part is the oil drain block, and those familiar with the A series will recognise that shape, and that's where the old mechanical fuel pump used to go on the back of the block. So this bolts up exactly in the same way as you would with a fuel pump. The only difference is this is a large return pipe from this point on the front of the conversion plate to get rid of the majority of the oil from the cylinder head. These 2 points here act as drains also from the rear of the cylinder head down at these 2 points. And this pipe and this pipe act as breathers. So it equalises, because you've got so much oil that gathers on the top of the head and makes its way down into the gearbox sump, you've got to balance it with pressure. If you don't have any sort of pressure relief, as it were, between the crankcase and the cylinder head, you can end up holding the oil in the cylinder head. I found this out on my first engine that we built back in 15-16 years ago, so I know it works. So these form the ancillary parts. We also do these 2 parts here, which are which we call our hose kit. So this is the big hose that goes from the front of the block as an oil drain round to the drain block at the rear, and then this is the bottom hose effectively, and it's got this big kink in it here that goes behind the cam belt. So once the engine's installed, the cam belt runs down. This is the output from the input from the water pump, and this kink puts the pipe around the back of the cam belt. It just makes it a little bit. You can fabricate all these parts, but it just saves on joins and makes a much neater job. So it's getting into the nitty gritty of the ancils and things. Like I say, at that point, you're in the car, it's all plumbed in. We then offer two options on exhaust manifold. If you're running a K1100 style cylinder head, you would run this exhaust manifold here, which has got 1 3/4" primaries and a 2-inch Y piece. The way we've designed the manifold to have it manufactured is the Y piece comes in exactly the same place under the Mini as an LCB would, for example. So you can use any aftermarket exhaust system you want with the with your engine style. Some people prefer RC40 styles. Some people like DTMs. It's your choice at that point. You can go from this point straight back to the exhaust. Once you start tuning the engine, you run out of the capability of this exhaust. This exhaust will suit everything from 100 horsepower up to 145 horsepower. But once you start switching over to say our regrind race cams, you really need this exhaust next to it. This is our big bore version. It's still a 4:2:1. This one's got 43mm primaries and a 2¼ inch exit on the exhaust. We've tried all sorts of variants. We've tried long 4:1s and yeah, many variants. But this is a race manifold, really does offer the best compromise over the entire RPM range for torque and power. So that's essentially the little twin cam conversion in its entirety, as it were. It'll drop into a round-nose Mini without any body modifications. Sometimes you have to lower the engine slightly on the engine mount to get clearance in the front pulley. You can generally get around it. You don't tend to have to cut the car at all. The standard throttle bodies will fit in the front of the car without touching the slam panel, and it just makes a super reliable, super dual-purpose engine. Having an all-aluminium construction cylinder head means it cools better than an iron 5-port as well. So you can get it. Most instances you can get away with a side mount radiator really easily, and it just opens up the possibilities on the A series. Many years ago, there may be a video somewhere. Mini Magazine did a feature on tuners cars. We had an LT cammed demo car at the time, and Richard Longman drove the car, and it was his engine of the day, effectively. If you can find out an old copy, it's worth a read. So tuning options, and once you've got used to your 125, 130 horsepower, you can move on. Pretty much sky's the limit. Normally aspirated tuning, we're up at about 180 horsepower maximum RPM on an 8 injector style setup. Race engine, we do 2 supercharged variants, both Rotrex powered, different specs. One's 200 horsepower, one's 250. So you're really getting on there at that point. And then we support customers that want to do turbo conversions, and they don't take a lot of boost to get well over 250 horsepower. So you can do all sorts of crazy things with the K, or once you've got it mechanically built. Normally aspirated tuning, we offer these, again, once you get above 150 horsepower, you need bigger throttles. So these are our bespoke manufactured for us by AT Power. Both throttle body shaftless design. They have a 7-degree downdraft angle, which helps get the inlet trumpets up above the slam panel on a Mini, which is important because once you get into the 150 plus horsepower range, you need very long induction lengths. These are our standard induction lengths to fit under a round nose bonnet, but if you're running a race engine at about 170 horsepower, you need an induction length about this far out. So we do billet throttle bodies. They can, you can use them on a softer variant if you want to future-proof the build. We also do reground camshafts. Our reground camshafts, based on the 1200 RS camshaft, and we take them to 296 degrees, and they've got just over 10mm of lift. Again, super versatile camshaft. We've got lots of customers around the world using them in road engines at 155 horsepower with fairly standard porting, standard BMW throttle bodies. Once you get into the billet throttle bodies, long induction lengths, race exhaust manifolds, you're well into the 170s, and it's still utterly drivable on the road, which is, you know, testament to the original design of the cylinder head. You want to go further than that, we do one-piece valves for inlet and exhaust. Again, UK made, done to our specification, and these maximise the standard seats. So they're both just over 1mm larger on diameter than standard. They're a one-piece stainless which have been treated. And yeah, they just make the most. At this point, if you do an 8-injector setup, you're well into the 180 horsepower region on the Twin Kam still, and you can drive it on the road. So there's better be loads of questions, but we thought we'd give you a brief sort of introduction to the Twin Kam series. And if you really want to, if you're thinking about it, and you know, most people start this way, is they'll pick up our build guide. We did this. Now this is revision 6, but that was 9 years ago. I must do another revision, and it goes through a lot about what I've talked about. You get lots of facts and figures. That's a bit of an index as to what it talks about. And again, I did this as an introduction, so people can sit down, have a read of it, and it'll cure your insomnia if you've got it. But hopefully you'll get some good information from it. And it talks about head gaskets and options, re-drilling blocks, valve cutouts, 8-valve cylinder heads, 16-valve cylinder heads, what the various parts do, valve cutouts and pistons, head studs, torquing, an early oil drain, bit more picture on the conversion. A little bit about tensioning system. The nice thing about keeping the old camshaft, you really need to keep the old camshaft for the oil pump drive, but it triangulates the belt perfectly. It triangulates the belt very much like an OEM car would. Again, it's as if it's meant to be there. Lots about the camshafts, how you time them up. Timing up the camshaft is really easy. Once you've done it once, you'll be really happy you've converted. Engines on dynos, water pump modifications for clearances. So yeah, it's a really good read as to the conversion, a little bit about throttle bodies. And I must say the standard throttle bodies that you get with either the LT or the RS head off, fantastic pieces of kit. They really are. The TPS, the throttle position sensor you get with them is fantastic as well. It's only when you need more power you've got to move away from them, but predominantly we try and get people to stay with them because they are such good quality product. So there's a bit on that, our ram pipe fitments, more stuff on ancillaries, timing up the trigger wheel, which again is fairly fundamental if you use one of our ECU kits. We do various looms for these things. This is our standard one, and like all of our looms, the ECU looks after all of the power distribution, and these two wires go to the car. So the hard work in terms of getting one of these up and running has been done for you from the wiring point of view. A little bit on ECU, a little bit of software, and there's some fun stuff at the back with dyno figures of various engines that we tested 10 years ago. Again, I must update it. There's all sorts of engine specs. So the nice thing is you can overlay pick a dyno graph, have a look at the figures at certain RPMs, and think, and then compare them and see which style of engine suits what you want to build. A little bit of comparison data between exhaust manifolds, so you can see how the black road exhaust manifold matches a race one up to about 5,500 RPM and then starts to tail off. And then a crazy, really nice car we did many years ago, which had full race 8-injector setup, and then we had a little bit of nitrous on top just for added fun. So yeah, if you're thinking about doing the conversion, these are available on the website. Grab a copy, have a read, drop us any questions. We do get questions from all over the world. We send these kits and their engines all over the world, or we can do as little or as much as you want. We'll send a converted block to you, we'll send just a kit, a head gasket, ARP head studs, an exhaust manifold, or a full engine. But yeah, have a look through all of our information on YouTube and the website, lots of downloads on the website, and we'll do another video for you soon. Thanks.